Hello, my name is Amanda Garner-Daring, and I am the Educational Director and co-owner of Brookside Montessori. This educational video will discuss development of peer relationships, play, and learning environments. Peers. Peers can have both a positive and negative impact on a child's development. Peers offer a space to explore pro-social behavior. These skills will then later come into play during dating and marital relationships. However, if a child feels lonely or is rejected by their peers, it can create mental health issues. Peers that do not exhibit pro-social behavior can lead to drug use, delinquency, and depression. Friendships have 6 purposes: companionship, stimulation, physical support, ego support, social comparison, and intimacy/affection. Friends often have similarities. This is called homophily. It is important for parents and guardians to be involved in their child's life and provide a positive example on pro-social behavior, to monitor friendships, especially those with mixed ages and mixed genders. Play. At ages 3, children usually prefer to play with peers of the same gender and often play gender-type activities. As children spend more and more time with others, they begin to have more positive exchanges instead of aggressive exchanges that are characterized by rough and tumble play. They will also begin to notice who is their friend and who is not a friend. Later, when children enter their elementary years, they spend even more time with their peers. Typically, boys that are ages 5 or older play in large groups, and girls that are 5 or older play in groups of 2 or 3. Typically, boys enjoy rough and tumble play, competition, risk-taking, and dominance-seeking. Typically, girl groups engage in collaborative discourse as well as social scenarios. Play is important because it allows children to relieve anxiety and conflict, express creativity, build language skills, work off energy, role-play different scenarios, learn pro-social behaviors, and gain empowerment. There are 5 types of play. 1. Sensory motor. Infants and toddlers explore material, especially materials that make interesting sounds or offer movement. Within sensory motor play, we often find practice play. Practice play means when a child repeats a skill, like putting an object inside a container or repeatedly dumping out containers of items. And we also find practice play in older children when they are running, jumping, throwing, kicking. The second type of play is pretense, also called symbolic play. We've all seen a toddler pretend to have a phone, and of course, whenever a toddler hands you their hand phone or their block phone, you have to answer the phone, no questions asked. This is symbolic play. Symbolic play is whenever a child is transforming their environment into other items. This typically happens between 9 to 30 months, and it peaks at 4 to 5 years. We often see preschoolers creating maybe a restaurant with rocks and mulch, and then these children are creating very elaborate scenarios where maybe some flavors are available to other children and other children won't have access to that same flavor. And then their customers and are expressing their feelings and opinions of the goods and services that are offered. The third type of play is social play. Social play is simply playing with peers. It involves turns, conversation, social games, and physical play. This type of play increases during the preschool years. The fourth type of play is constructive play, and we often see this in elementary classrooms as well as all types of preschool classrooms. It's a combination of sensory motor and practice play with the addition of representing ideas. So in sensory motor play, we would see children maybe, mixing up paint and spreading it all over themselves. Or with blocks, we're going to see them putting the blocks in, maybe they're turning it around and they're really observing that block. However, in constructive play, we're going to see children are then maybe stacking up blocks and it's creating this really nice village scene, and maybe they're getting the paint out and they're using paint brushes and their hands, and they've created this really lovely restaurant. The last type of play is games. Number 5 is games, and this is very interesting during ages 10 to 12, as well as for preschoolers. In preschoolers, it looks different than what we might consider, and for preschoolers, games are going to be taking turns as well as exploring reciprocating. So as mentioned in my previous video, children really oftentimes are lacking ample time as well as resources for playtime. Children need to have at least 90 minutes of playtime daily, and schools and families should work together to ensure that children are getting 90 minutes of playtime. Schools need to make sure that their routine allows for ample recess, and families should be looking at their routine and making sure that they're not overscheduling enrichment classes and that they're limiting screen time. As far as education, there are 2 main approaches to education: constructivist and direct instruction. Constructivist is a learner-centered approach that allows the student to create their knowledge base with a teacher close by for guidance. We often find that a lot of preschool teachers, as well as preschoolers, naturally find themselves inclined towards constructivist education. On the other side, we have direct instruction. This is a very teacher-centered approach. Its goals are to maximize teaching time, to minimize distraction. It has very high expectations. Both of these approaches have positive sides as well as some cons, and it's really important in teaching to have a balanced approach between constructivist as well as direct instruction. There are many approaches within constructivist education, including but not limited to Reggio, Waldorf, and Montessori. Just like in general constructivist and direct instruction, all of those different models do have different pros and cons, and all approaches should ensure that they are following developmentally appropriate practices. There are special considerations in education for lower income families as well as children with special needs. Lower income families often struggle because of low expectations, lack of money for educational experiences, lack of nutrition, high crime, as well as low quality schooling. It is crucial for families, schools, and the community to come together to pool resources to ensure that our lower income families are having their needs met, both physically as well as emotionally and just logical resources. Before the 1970s, schools did not even have to educate children with special needs. And then after the 1970s, legislation was created to ensure that children with disabilities are receiving services. At the bare minimum, children with special needs are required to be evaluated and have their eligibility determined for services, to receive an appropriate education, to receive an IEP, and as well as an environment that is appropriately similar to the environment they would have been in if they were not a child with special needs.